Well, welcome everybody to another edition of Email Never Sleeps. I'm Andrew Kordek, the VP of Customer Engagement here at iPost, and I wanted to welcome you all back, whether this is your first time or your 10th time watching the show. I really appreciate it. I have a colleague joining us today, Jen Nespola Lantz of Kickbox. She's been in the industry for quite some time. So Jen, I'm gonna let you do a quick introduction about yourself and your background and the whole 9 yards. So fire away.
Sure. My name is Jen, as you already know. I work for Kickbox. I am leading the consulting team there for the deliverability audits that come in, consulting, any type of deliverability stuff. I work very closely with Al on product. And we're just super excited about, continuing to develop the product, helping senders send the right way. And also working with like conferences like MOG, some of the other big ones out there to just promote best practices and also to help fight abuse.
Yeah, no, it's great. And full disclosure, everybody, Kickbox is a partner of iPost. We had Al on in an earlier episode, and I want to get your perspective. And we actually have a really interesting topic today. And the name of this Email Never Sleeps is what the modern marketing agency needs to do to align themselves in email marketing. It's a mouthful, but we're start talking about the modern marketing agency, and that's sort of near and dear to my heart. As some of you may know, I co-founded Trendline Interactive about 12 years ago. And we were an email agency, but I'm curious, you chose this topic, right? You and I were chatting back and forth on Slack, and I was like, hey, just choose a topic, and you chose this topic. And so I'm curious, Jen, why did you choose it? What's the impetus behind all this?
I think I chose it because I think agencies, they're fantastic at what they do. There's a lot of good strategy there, and you can take some of that marketing strategy and apply it to email in a lot of really positive ways. But I think that you also really need to know the technical side of it. And the reason why I started thinking of it this way is because a lot of the consults we're getting lately are very technical, and it's coming in that there's a lack of support or knowledge on the technical side, whether it's authentication or best practices on like how you should be sending, what's your right setup, is this the right vendor for you, and so on. And without that technical knowledge, you could be doing a fantastic job with your marketing, but if it's not going through the system in a way that's going to be effective, it's not going to hit the mark that you want.
But let's separate this. You said the technical sides are coming into your consulting business, right? And these are just technical people, because there's a distinct difference between someone in tech or IT and someone that's in email technology, right? Because I kind of view those two as very different swim lanes. And so are you having like general tech people, or are you having people that are kind of wearing different hats at organizations coming in and asking the technical stuff?
It's email marketers coming in.
Okay. Marketers. Okay.
Yeah, so it's coming from the marketing side, and they may be working with agencies and getting ideas of these are things that you can do to improve. But we're finding that the technical aspects of email marketing are not being addressed in a way that's helpful for them.
So the title is why they need to align themselves. And it's curious because I was thinking about this before the call today. And when I look at agencies, the modern agency in itself, right? You sort of go to the websites, and some of them are beautiful and they do amazing work. They kind of treat email as, yeah, we do it, right? And, they do branding and they do all this other social and all these different things. And then email's kind of tucked away as sort of like a checkbox, like we do email marketing. And not to sound snotty, I don't, but I think email marketing is such a niche, such a specialty, right? And you have the general email marketer. I always say there's 5 sets of email marketers, right? But that technical email marketer may not be the same as your creative email marketer, right? And so when we start talking about alignment, the first thing that comes to mind is you need to kind of have a couple of different email marketers at your agency in order to align yourselves. Right? Because deliverability, and you've been in a majority of your career, right? It's a special niche, right? I know enough to be dangerous, but nothing probably like you or Al or Kickbox in general. And so is there aspects that you're like seeing, like what advice would you give if you have a modern marketing agency owner listening to this, so just even somebody that works in an agency, what would be your general advice?
Yeah. As you were describing the website, it just makes me think, if I shoot a basketball, I might make the hoop, but I can't call myself a basketball player. So,
Right.
you can't,
Right.
you have to be very careful. You might be able to do email marketing, but with the technical piece, getting people on your team, for example, even if you
Right.
don't want to hire someone full time, you need to at least have a partner in your
Mhm.
agency that you can go to and say, I'm going to recommend that this is what they're going to do moving forward. And is this the
Mhm.
right way? Are there any technical aspects to bring in? And sometimes it's as simple as um, understanding the basics of deliverability. You don't have to be an expert, but understanding the basics of, okay, you have a brand, but how
Mhm.
does that brand translate on a technical side into domains? How does that translate into a technical side of warming those domains and what you have to do with them? And are there
Mhm.
DNS components that you need to keep in mind? How does it all stay connected?
Right.
And then in addition, some might say, oh, this is a really great idea. Let's spin up a web page and this is the domain we'll give it, but then you're not tying it back to the brand, and that could
Right.
also create email deliverability problems. So
Right.
there's that
Right.
technical aspect that can ties it all together.
I think when we start talking about marketers in general, what's really interesting is that you could be good at a lot of things, or you can be amazing at one thing. And this is where I kind of go into the specialty, right? So if I'm an elite athlete, in other words, I have an elite email program, and I rely heavily on my email program, whether I sell widgets or subscriptions or socks or whatever, right? There's this aspect uh, uh, of getting into the inbox, and there's also this aspect of how do I run my email program. But what's interesting is you can't hire somebody that is a family practitioner doctor to run your very specialized email program. It's like me saying, I broke my knee and I'm an elite athlete, and I have my family practitioner play orthopedic surgeon to fix my knee, right? You kind of have to kind of go into the niche. And so my big thing about the modern agency today is try not to be one or many things to everybody. Be really specialized, or get the right people in place, right? Don't expect that there's a social marketer or a brand marketer that can just kind of put their hat on and work email strategy, because and I know, because we've been around for a long time, this stuff changes all the time, from deliverability to creative to trends to really, when we start talking about best practices, I mean, there's a morphing, there's like a mold that kind of keeps changing. I don't know if you agree with that or not. I'm just
I
curious.
I think so, because email changes so much, and when you think about what happened with Apple's MPP and data, and the
Yeah.
focus goes back to collect your own first data. And so
Mm.
when you think about a email or a marketing agency who's providing recommendations on this is what you want to do or how you want to target or whatever, then
Yeah.
you need to understand, how does that data flow into the email, or how do you connect it all? How do you keep it safe and
Mhm.
private and meet all the things that you want your customers to have and the brand that goes with it? And
Right.
it it changes. And at one point we were in this very data heavy, like get data from everywhere. And now we're moving kind of on the other side, where we're just like,
Mm.
just focus on your data.
Yeah.
Because there's the privacy that comes into play. And I think all
Mhm.
those things contribute to what you're doing and the message and how you want your customers to trust you.
Right. And I think that, when we start talking about an agency, right, owning the stack, right, owning the
Mhm.
brand and the social aspect of marketing and email and stuff. I've talked to plenty of agency marketers, agency owners over my career. And the one thing that keeps coming back to me is we need somebody that really understands email. How do we train this one person that we've designated as our account director, account manager, whatever is that liaison into the client? I'm like, you can't. Like there's so many different things. I once wrote out a list of everything that an email marketer should or would be responsible for. And I think I ended up with 135 things, right? To kind of like watch and monitor. And that can't be done by one person. There's not that that one person that knows everything. Like I wouldn't go to Al Iverson at Kickbox and say, hey, tell me about creative strategy, right? May or may not be his thing, or that may or may not be your thing, right? I mean, you guys are very deep in specialists. And so I always say, hire people that really are a part of that niche, because that's really how to get behind email, because we all know that email can be very revenue driven, right? And so go ahead.
Or partner with them, because it could be hard to bring. I look at email, there's so many different specialties, even within email. I think about when I follow some of the threads and you start hearing about accessibility. That's a huge piece for email, but I don't know if all agencies are tied into that, or accessibility in the view of email. And how do you, when you're engaging an interpretation of an email might be different than an interpretation of a live ad, and can you bring AMP in to help, and all these other aspects that can really help develop an email program that you may not be privy to.
I don't know, is it me, Jen, but I kind of feel like the email community in and itself is also sort of a, we help one another. There's this niche and these Slack groups that both you and I belong to, and it always seems like there are people willing to offer advice. Some of it may be wrong, some of it, most of it's right, but some of the, we're willing to help one another despite people being competitive in nature. I don't know if there's other industries, maybe I'm just being, obtuse or narrow in my thinking, but there are people out there willing to help, or at least educate at the surface level without getting too deep. So not only partner with somebody, but get involved, because I think people are willing to offer up their advice and different perspectives. And I think that's a beautiful thing about our industry. And I so appreciate that, right? And despite being in this thing 22 years, I don't know. I know how much I don't know, and it's scary, right? From that perspective. So final thoughts, like if you had a captive audience, which you probably will in this, final thoughts on alignment. We have this thing, align themselves in email marketing. What would your final thoughts be?
I still think it's very much tied to, and we've talked about it, is get yourself aligned with someone that knows about email, whether you hire them or not, because there are technical aspects that I think are missed so much that it hinders everything else. And you don't have to learn it all. You just have to know who to go to.
Right. I think I want to add on to that point, because that's the partnership aspect of it. But the first thing I would ask is, if you want them to do something like deliverability or creative strategy or life cycle strategy or what, ask the questions. If you're going to partner with him, how much experience do you have in doing this? Anybody can pick up a book and read about deliverability and say, I'm an email marketing deliverability expert. And that's not the case. Same goes true with people who say, I can put together a life cycle strategy, right? The alignment and the partnership has to be someone that has, for the lack of a better term, street cred, right? People that have done this for a while, right? And can show that what they've done has incrementally worked, but also believes in this sort of testing thing, this test and learn, not just talk about it, but how do you actually put something together? So this modern agency, whether you're a new agency owner or a old timer, right? Sort of like me, right? That has owned an agency for a while, partner with somebody, but partner with the right somebody, and make sure you ask the right questions before you enter into a partnership. And there are so many different consultants out there that can really help, but just be very, very careful at doing that. Right. Any final closing thoughts before we end our series, or at least this part of the series that Email Never Sleeps? Or
no, I think you summarized it nice. I would say a question you could ask when you're interviewing your partner is, what have you recently learned or done wrong? Because I think it shows a lot if you can come to the table and say, I've done all these wonderful things, because most people are only going to share the wonderful things that they've done because they want your business, right? But if you can get someone who can be honest, to be like, oh my gosh, I did not know this even after 20 years. And I just found this out, and this could help you tremendously to keep in mind. And so you can see that they're constantly learning and how they can reach out and solve through other means.
And maybe that's a topic for a different email number slave ship. What is the biggest screw ups we've ever done in email, right? Like I got some doozies, right? To give away. Jen of Kickbox, look, it's been great. You guys are great partners of ours. I follow you a lot. I listen to you a lot. Everybody, if you don't know Jen, link in with her. We'll have some links in this video. You can look her up on LinkedIn. Kickbox, they're a wonderful organization. I highly encourage you to go and check them out. Jen, thank you so much for your time today. And thank you, everybody, for taking part in Email Never Slaves.